Okay, let me show you an example from a tabloid. A tabloid is kind of like those really cheap quality fake newspapers you see in the supermarket, um, maybe right before the cash register in the US, the UK, for example. Moon landing was a hoax. It's kind of a conspiracy theory that NASA didn't really send people to the moon. It was all a hoax. Couldn't really do it, so they faked it in a movie studio, probably by Stanley Kubrick, who is at the time the best filmmaker around. It was faked, filmed in a studio, and live sent out like a live stream. Right. Now here's a parody of the tabloid genre. The Onion is a famous satire website, theonion.com. It's a famous satire parody site. It's humor. Any headline you see there is all joke. I mean, just like tabloids, like um, this one showing the moon landing story. Much of the stuff is made up for tabloids or exaggerated. Stories about which celebrity is, you know, is a has a drug problem or is having an affair with somebody. The Onion plays with that and makes up totally crazy fake headlines for humor purposes. It's all humor. It's for humor. So there's, of course, the famous JFK assassination. President Kennedy was shot by at least one gunman. And then a whole conspiracy theory developed. Actually, several conspiracy theories. And this Onion headline is making fun of all those conspiracy theories, combining them all into one involving CIA, the mafia, organized crime, Fidel Castro, the dictator of Cuba, LBJ, Lyndon Baines Johnson, who was Kennedy's vice president and became president after he died, Teamsters, which is the truck drivers union, which had some ties to the mafia too, and the Freemasons, which is a kind of a social club, which we'll talk about later. In fact, they're sometimes implicated in conspiracy theories. Now, what happened with the assassination of JFK? Lee Harvey Oswald, was a communist sympathizer. He liked communism, communist countries, and he was angry because JFK was preventing communism or standing up to the Soviet Union. So he shot JFK, apparently for that reason. And then one guy who was really angry at Oswald, a Kennedy fan, really was angry at Oswald for shooting Kennedy. So this guy, he was a theater owner, shot Oswald a few days later. So we never got to question Oswald and find out all the reasons why he did it and how he planned it. And maybe some secrets went with him to the grave. And because the recordings of the assassination were low quality, it's sometimes hard to tell. Was it just the few gunshots fired by Oswald, or were there some other gunshots from somewhere else? It's hard to tell from the poor quality recordings of that time. Because there's so much uncertainty, did Oswald act alone? Was there another gunman involved? Did somebody help Oswald? That's led to all these crazy conspiracy theories. And even director Oliver Stone made a movie promoting one of those conspiracy theories, sadly. So one of the reasons these conspiracy theories develops is because there's a question that people can't answer or people don't understand. So, hey, conspiracy theory is a convenient explanation. So a theory is an explanation. We talked about how a scientific theory is an explanation of some scientific phenomenon. A conspiracy theory is designed to explain something that some people can't understand. They're unable to understand something, so they create conspiracy theories. Are there any conspiracy theories that you personally are familiar with? And do any of them sound kind of plausible or kind of believable to you? What are some other reasons why people believe in them? What kind of people believe in them? Think about this for a minute. Pause and discuss. Okay, we'll talk later about some examples. and some of the reasons why people believe in them. First, let's talk about the information aspect. If you remember Pareidolia, that's visual and auditory information. When you're talking about an event, let's say the death of Kennedy, there's a good deal of information out there about what happened, and then some things we don't understand. So we're looking at information. And when you look at a bunch of information, it's easy to see patterns that are not really there. Just like you see patterns in visual information that are not there, pareidolia, you can see you can see patterns in information or data sets that are not really there. The information or data equivalent of pareidolia is apophenia. That's a technical term for seeing patterns in information or data sets that are not really there. False pattern recognition. When it comes to, say, understanding political events and how modern countries are developing and changing and evolving, and maybe how the culture is changing in ways that you don't understand, you've got a huge data set. You've got news events and political and social events from the past 5 years or 10 years or 100 years or more. And maybe you don't understand enough about politics and economics and international relations and sociology to understand really what's happening. What's happening to our country? What's happening to our culture? You don't understand. We get this huge data set of all the economic data for the past 5 or 10 or 100 years and political events over the past century, news events. There's a huge, huge set of information, and you can find whatever patterns you want to find in that. And people do. That's one reason for conspiracy theories, apophenia. Now, there's a nice fictional example of this years ago. If you know Star Trek, you might know that in the 90s and early 2000s, there was one Star Trek series on TV, Star Trek Voyager. In one episode, dealt with the development of a conspiracy theory in a very interesting way. It showed the development of a conspiracy theory from something little to, as it gets bigger and bigger, and turns into something really massive and grand, huge. So there's this character on this starship here in the middle called Seven, and she's human, but she has some robotic and electronic implants through which she can take in information sometimes. Well, one morning she happened to take in too much information through her electronic implants. Too much information got downloaded into her brain. It was really more than what she could handle or process very well. And so she starts to develop a conspiracy theory. It starts out small, a conspiracy involving the captain of the ship and then the officers, and it gets bigger and bigger. It grows and evolves throughout the episode until finally at the end she is explaining an extremely grand, huge conspiracy involving not only the captain and officers of the ship, but whole alien races in a grand, huge conspiracy, which sounds ridiculous. And because her brain was overloaded with too much information and she couldn't process it. And that's I think, a very clever examination of conspiracy theories. So how do they grow? And why do they appeal to people? Pause again and discuss this some more. Discuss further. What are characteristics of these theories? Why do they become popular? Why do they appeal to people? Pause and discuss. Okay, let's look at the characteristics of conspiracy theory, and these explain some of their appeal. They are theories about complex events or major events or phenomena. It could be some really major event like why did the 9/11 terrorist attack happen, on September 11th, 2001? What happened there? If you don't understand it, if you don't really understand all the complexities, the global politics and religious, political, social factors involved, it's easy to jump to conspiracy theory. Complex events, phenomena. So, for example, less educated people in, say, the US and England, they don't understand political events. They don't understand, and these maybe are usually very conservative people, and they don't understand, they don't really understand in a very deep way, conceptually, uh, why progressive or liberal politicians, leaders are trying to do what they want to do. And they falsely guess their intentions. They guess that their intentions are evil when their intentions are not evil. And again, there are left-wing conspiracy theories that do the same thing toward mainstream and conservative politicians. Although right now, what's really getting attention are these more right-wing conspiracy theories. Um, or let's say, for example, you're kind of a relatively uneducated white person in, say, a factory town in England or in the US, or let's say it's in Ohio or Pennsylvania in the US. Your great grandfather and grandfather worked at the steel factory, the steel mill. And your father worked at the steel factory, and they got paid well. You used to work at the steel factory, and it was a good paying job, relatively, for a job that only required a high school education or maybe no education. Then the factory closes and the jobs get moved to Mexico or China. And there are no good jobs left in this small town. Your first reaction is to blame Mexico or China rather than to blame the greedy company executives who made the decision to move the jobs to another country. And there are no good jobs in the community. Uh, Never mind that you didn't bother to go to college or you never had a chance to go to college because politicians didn't really invest in spending and education and training for people enough. You didn't have, and now you can't go to college. You can't afford it. So the only jobs for you in this small town are working at Walmart, working at McDonald's, or a gas station for a lot less money than what you used to make at the steel factory. So these people are confused, they're angry, and they can't understand the complex economic, political, geopolitical forces and factors involved in all of this. And education. Uh, they probably don't value education and understand its importance. It's increasingly hard to survive without a good education in this modern world. More and more, you need at least a college education, if not something higher, for many fields. Um, I mean, there are good jobs for people who go in other directions, like training to be an electrician, and that's cool. Training to be a computer person, and that's fine. Don't necessarily need a college degree for some of those jobs, but that requires still some training. So these people don't understand what's going on, and a conspiracy theory is a convenient explanation that they will turn to, or at least if it's not a conspiracy theory, it's at least blaming Mexicans, blaming Chinese for their problems, blaming the other political party, even though it was not their fault. So these are convenient explanations for complex phenomena that people can't understand. And it is common to blame powerful groups, sinister groups to ascribe evil motives. They're sinister, they're evil, they're bad. And it could be a group like Congress or a political party or certain political movements. More often, uh, it's more appealing to blame some secret group There's some secret political group involved. That's what's happening. That's why we can't get good jobs, and that's why things are changing so fast. Another thing they might be having trouble understanding is why is the culture changing so fast? It's becoming more liberal, and um, um, some traditional men, they don't like the fact that women are getting more equality. They don't understand this. Gays are getting the right to marry and things like that. They don't understand how the culture is changing. It's being urbanized, modernized. They don't understand this. And again, being confused, they blame groups they can blame, including conspiracies. Of course, a common characteristic of these conspiracy theories is there is no real evidence. There is no real evidence that the Illuminati exist today and that they are doing this, that they are managing this. In fact, if some group like the Illuminati really has been in charge for the past 200 or 300 years, would they have taken control by now? Wouldn't they have full control? Because the claim is some Illuminati or Illuminati type group is trying to take over the world and establish a one world dictatorship, some kind of communist dictatorship or authoritarian dictatorship. They would have done it by now if they really existed, but they haven't, if they've had this much power. These kinds of beliefs resist falsification. So if I'm a scientist and I propose a hypothesis, it's one I can test and I can do an experiment that would falsify it if it's wrong or prove it if it's right. These conspiracy theories will resist falsification. If you try to explain the realities, political realities, to a person who believes in this, they will dismiss it or they will try to reinterpret things. Like whatever you say, they will try to reinterpret it to make it fit the conspiracy. They will deny whatever you say. They will resist whatever you say. If you try to show that there's a better explanation or the correct explanation, they will resist it. And the theory is so complex, and you can easily come up with some new explanation on the spot. If you say, well, what about this? And they'll say, oh, because they'll make up some explanation on the spot based on their conspiracy. It's called an ad hoc explanation. Ad hoc, like on the spot. Just for this purpose, I'll make up an explanation. So even when there are other explanations that are more plausible, more realistic, they will resist those explanations or not be open to them or just be unaware of them. Because the real explanations, what's really happening is often more complex. Women are getting more equal rights because a lot of women want equal rights. It's not because there's some conspiracy at the top to put men down. It's that there's a grassroots. So grassroots is an expression meaning from the bottom of this, from average people in society on up. Average normal people like working women have been organizing and fighting for their rights, trying to influence the top, the leaders. So it's from the bottom up. It's a grassroots movement. So the feminist movement, for example, is a grassroots movement. It's not like some conspiracy from the top designed to hurt or weaken men. That's not the purpose at all. It is a grassroots movement to give women more power, to give women equal power and status to men. But conspiracy theory advocates will assume that there's some evil intention. Oh, they're trying to hurt or weaken men, and that's nonsense. So a movement is not a conspiracy, especially a grassroots movement. Gay rights, equal rights for women, equal rights for minorities. These are grassroots movements from the people, not being orchestrated or controlled from the top by some conspiracy. So the real explanations are often complex. And for people who don't understand the complexities of social and political and economic events and factors, the conspiracy is an easier explanation. And of course, there's apophenia, again, large data set, all political and social events and occurrences and phenomena and movements. it's easy to read any kind of pattern in there that you want to find. You can find whatever pattern you want to find in complex data like that. And of course, along with that, biases and fallacies go along with that as well. Now, there's another factor, and this might surprise you. People who believe in conspiracy theories, especially these theories involving global power, some secret group trying to gain global power, like Illuminati theories, these people tend to have an authoritarian personality preference, and it may or may not go along with authoritarian political views. So authoritarian, like a dictator. Think of Donald Trump and some of the political methods he's using to gain more power, to assert his power, are kind of authoritarian, he and his followers. Now, some people who believe in these conspiracy theories would say that we're all for freedom and democracy, but some of them do actually prefer some political authoritarianism if it serves their interests, their ideals. Or at least they have a personality preference for authoritarian style, even if they really believe that they are for political freedom and democracy. At a personal level, in some way they prefer some kind of authoritarianism. Maybe it's an authoritarian husband in the family who tells the wife and children what to do and you have to obey no matter what. Or it could be a religious authority, it could be a local political authority, a social leader, somebody as a belief that somebody should have authority to tell others what to do, and an openness to that kind of an authoritarian method of operation, at least at the local level, at the family level, or in their family or their social or religious or local political group. Or somewhere they believe they have an openness to some kind of authoritarianism, even if they think they don't want to see an authoritarian government in the capital. Why would conspiracy believers have this kind of a mindset? This is kind of an interesting question. I want you to think about it for a minute. So pause and discuss. Why do they have this kind of an authoritarian tendency in their thinking? Okay, so the answer is kind of interesting. When people believe in a conspiracy, they believe in a conspiracy that is operating in an authoritarian manner. The Illuminati are taking control and using authoritarian measures to take control and to promote their views, to force their views onto the public, or to force their views on the political world. Because they assume that's how the world actually works. They don't understand that maybe the world, or at least their country, really works on more democratic and non-authoritarian principles. The way things become law, including things they don't like. It happens through democratic means, not through some authoritarian secret society using authoritarian methods to impose their views on us. They assume that's how the world works. And it's maybe the way they would do things if they were in power, if they could have control. And you see this with some of Trump's followers. They want to use authoritarian methods to promote their views and to strike back against their political opponents or to suppress their opponents. So they are projecting their own ideas about how the world works onto this alleged conspiracy. It's psychological projection. It's something that they say that they don't like, but they assume that's what the others are doing, is psychological projection, because it's actually something that they themselves actually in some way prefer or believe in, or they think that that's how things happen anyway. So they project it onto world events, into the conspiracy. There are some other reasons why people psychologically are open to conspiracies. Again, if you're If you are confused about political changes and cultural changes you don't understand, it's confusing, well, it's kind of comforting, at least in a strange way. And instead of thinking, oh, it's random or I can't understand it, to say, oh, it's I have an explanation. It's because of this conspiracy or this evil group of people. So in a strange way, it's kind of comforting, because if you're depressed, for example, or anxious, the symptom of depression or anxiety is not feeling a sense of control. But by believing in a conspiracy, you get some sense of control. Oh, I understand what's going on. It gives you a sense of control when you don't understand what's going on. Oh, I understand it's because of the secret group that's doing things behind the scenes. It also appeals to your ego, your pride. I understand what's going on. I mean, the rest of the people, they don't believe me. They think I'm crazy. I understand. So it's a boost for your ego if you believe in this. All those people, they don't know. They don't know about the Illuminati. They don't know what's going on. I know. I understand. I know, because I know that it's the Illuminati doing this. I understand. So you feel better about yourself compared to others, because you understand something that others don't know or others don't believe. You feel special. And that's part of the psychological appeal. What are some common examples of conspiracies? We'll get to that in the next segment, starting from some older ones and some smaller ones, working our way up to the really big ones like Illuminati theories. And there are many different flavors or variations on these kinds of world domination theories. A theory that there's some group like the Illuminati that's trying to take over the world domination theories. We'll get to that in the next segment.